This is the Bat Flip Podcast. Now here's your host, Damien, David, and Matt.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Bat Flip Podcast season previews. And today we're actually going to go a little bit out of order because of the games happening this week for the the Japan series. So we're going to do Damien's team today, the Los Angeles Dodgers, the defending world champions and the favorites for 2025. So, Damien, I guess you're probably going to end up talking more than me in this episode a little bit, but because this is your team and you're an expert here. But the Dodgers come into 2025, obviously won the World Series last year. They've made some big splashes once again in the offseason, added a few high-profile players. They lost a little bit, but not a ton. Maybe a little bit more of a sentimental loss than anything else for Dodgers fans. But production-wise, they didn't lose an absolute ton. It's going to be very interesting to see how they're able to back up their 2024 season that ended in a title. So, Damien, I guess I guess this isn't even really a good question to ask, but where do you see the state of the Dodgers right now?
Yeah, so first off, I want to say we're actually talking about my real favorite team this time and not Matt's made-up thing the last time we were talking about the Giants. Yeah, I mean, obviously, what can be said about where this team is outside of, defending World Series champions? They've won the division, 11 of 12 years or something like that, and they're the highest payroll in the game. They went buku, best player in the game as well. Like they are locked to make the playoffs almost. They're going to be the heavy favorite to make the World Series from everybody. There's been controversy this offseason about if what they're doing is good for baseball. We've had our talks about that, but what else is there to say other than like it's expected to be a repeat of last year? I mean, if they don't repeat from last year, it's going to be looked at as a failure.
Yeah, I think that's probably a good way to put it because, I think that baseball's weird, and I don't know that the Dodgers are so far head and shoulders above everyone else that other teams can't compete with them. It's not like the Warriors when they got Kevin Durant or something. It's more of the Dodgers are probably better than everyone else, but there's still some things that maybe give you a little bit of pause about this team that we'll talk about here in a few minutes. But they are extremely good, and they're definitely the favorites right now to going into the season here. But I guess we can start about that offseason we mentioned here a minute ago and look at the additions they made. And, they made some big splashes here. Blake Snell was the big number, the big paid signing. He got a big time contract here coming over from the Giants. / Padres, which is interesting that he's been with their two division rivals the last couple of years.
Right.
But Blake Snell's a 2-time Cy Young winner. I think Damien and I probably disagree on Blake Snell as much as pretty much anybody could disagree on a player. I've always been, I wouldn't call myself a Blake Snell hater, but I've always been a little bit of a skeptic of Blake Snell, and I felt like his couple of Cy Young years were a little bit they were deserved because of his numbers at the end of the season. His counting stats were really, really good, but I thought they were a little bit of a flash in the pan. But I will say that last year he pitched absolutely phenomenal in 20 starts for the Giants. So, Damien, what do you think Blake Snell adds to this to the Dodgers here this year? Then we can talk about the others here in a minute.
Yeah, so I think I was honestly, if you told me 4 years ago, I probably would be on the same train as you as Blake Snell, a skeptic from a lot of things, but he was someone who I I didn't like, but I wanted to find out why people did like him. So I actually dove into watching a lot of his starts, reading up on him a lot. And the thing with Snell is that I'll try to keep it short. The thing I like about him after learning more about it is that you look at his base numbers and you go, man, he has bad control because he walks people so much. And it's kind of not that. It's more so of he trusts his stuff so much to the fact of he says like, if you're not going to hit my good pitches or the pitches that are like right on the borderline of the zone, you're going to take it for a walk. I'm going to strike the next person out. And that's kind of his philosophy as well. So I've really come to enjoy watching Blake Snell the past 2 to 3 years because of that. And then he happens to sign on my team as well. But um, I think there is going to be some years where you just, those breaks of striking everyone out just doesn't quite reach it. So it's going to be interesting to see how the Dodgers portray, some of that into their own pitching um, development and how their own pitching strategies, I should say.
Right, right. Yeah, that's probably a good way for the positivity on Blake Snell. For me, it's just there's a little bit of an injury history. There's the innings concerns he's had at times. Um, but we'll see what happens. I mean,
Yeah,
it's definitely worth a try if you're the Dodgers and you can spend unlimited money because the upside here is really, really high.
yeah, he
So
probably has some of the top like 15 to 20 stuff in the game when he's healthy, like, and he's on. But that's the question.
yeah, exactly. But the rest of the guys here that in the additions column, most of them are still like really impactful additions, and we haven't even
Yeah,
talked about them yet.
yeah,
Roki Sasaki is a very interesting addition. Coming over from Japan, he was a sensation over there. He's got the hard fastball. He's really young. He's got a good splitter. He's the I don't know. He feels a little bit like Shohei Ohtani, but he doesn't hit in some ways. Where kind of his profile and what you're looking at there when Shohei first came over. So Roki Sasaki is definitely an impactful ad. He will be in the big leagues this year. I believe he's slated to start Game 2 of the Japan series, so
yeah,
he'll make his debut overseas, which is interesting. But definitely an interesting ad there. They brought in Tanner Scott, the best reliever on the market, to add to their bullpen. There were a couple losses in their bullpen that I don't think we've added those in our subtraction column here, but I know that they had dealt with some, the losses that they have dealt with some injuries last year, but the Dodgers bullpen's been fairly depleted by injuries here recently, so they had needed to add a couple. They added Tanner Scott. Kirby Yates had a phenomenal year last year. I don't know if I trust him
yeah.
going forward, but his year last year was phenomenal, so he's definitely worth a shot here on a short contract. And then they also brought in Hae Sung Kim from Korea, and he's kind of an interesting middle infielder, kind of a contact guy. We'll see what he's able to do. I think he'll probably play a utility role at some point. But Damian, we'll probably talk more about Roki Sasaki here in a few minutes, and the bullpen guys. But out of the two bullpen guys, which one do you think ends up being the more impactful? I'm assuming Tanner Scott, but Kirby Yates was actually better last year than Tanner Scott.
Yeah, the Kirby Yates is going to be fine, but the thing is I expect Yates, especially when everyone in the bullpen gets healthy, to be more of a like middle reliever. So as far not like a setup guy,
Right.
where Tanner Scott is going to basically be the closer. Dave Roberts has kind of said that. And if you really look at the Dodgers bullpen from the past 3 to 4 years, one thing they've really been missing is like a super dominant left-handed reliever that can just overpower people,
Hmm.
right? Like they have Alex Vesia. He can be inconsistent at times, but his fastball is really good because it has a lot of vertical break to it, but it only tops out like 93, 94, right? So he really struggles sometimes to get up and kind of just surprise those left-handed hitters. Tanner Scott's just going to dominate them. We saw what he did in the playoffs against Shohei Ohtani and Freddie Freeman. When he's on, he's just lights out, and that left-handed lights out reliever is something the Dodgers bullpen has kind of missed for 3 to 4 years. So he's been someone I've been screaming for them to get for like 2 years since he was on the Marlins. Like I was all in on Hader, that didn't happen, and I was like all in on Scott. I'm so happy they finally got like a dominant left-handed reliever.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really big move for them. So, I guess we'll talk real quick about the subtractions here. Walker Bueller. I know Damien hates that one, but
Ah,
it's a tough one for Dodgers fans because he was
yeah,
one of the first out of their farm system rebuild that they did to come up, and he was really successful. Helped them win the World Series. Um, he he's been a phenomenal playoff performer for them. Um, and he was big in this past World Series as well. Even though the regular season went really poor, he had a couple good starts in the postseason that really helped them when they were struggling with some pitching depth. So that's a big one for Dodgers fans. I don't know how impactful losing him is because he didn't pitch very much last year in the regular season, and he really didn't pitch well when he did pitch late in the season, coming off of the Tommy John surgery. So. Um, I don't know how much it affects this team year to year here, but it is still a big loss for the Dodgers. Jack Flaherty, he really didn't perform all that well after the trade. He was traded there at the deadline from the Tigers, He's back with the Tigers again, which is funny. But he's he's somebody that I think I think he's a pretty big loss too. He had a great year last year, and I know it wasn't perfect with the Dodgers, but he put up some big starts for the Dodgers too.
Yeah.
Gavin Lux, I'm sure that kind of hurts the Dodgers fans because he was such a highly touted prospect, and he's shown some flashes at the big league level, but he just never really figured it out, and really needed a change of scenery. So that's probably a good move for the Dodgers to switch him out. And Ryan Brazier was pretty good in the bullpen for them last year. So, Damian, I guess out of Bueller and Flaherty, which one of these guys do you hate losing them more on the actual like production side, not necessarily on the you hate losing Walker Bueller side?
Yeah, I mean, I have my feelings about Bueller and where how I feel like he should have been a Dodger for life for other reasons that aren't just quite off or on the
Yeah,
field reasons. But um, I honestly think that Walker Bueller figured some stuff out in the postseason last year that is going to help him move forward as the next evolution of a pitcher. Last time he had Tommy John, he came back throwing 99, 100. This time he came back throwing 97, 95. Like he would get to 97, but he mostly sat like 95. And it wasn't the same pitch, and the numbers weren't quite the same off of how it performed, right? So he found a cutter, he found a sinker, and he found a sweeper kind of going into the postseason. I really do believe that he is going to have a good year. Like I think people are expecting the old Walker Bueller to come back. I don't think that's quite the case, but I think this is going to be the next evolution of Walker Bueller as a pitcher. And I do think he's going to have a solid season. Where Flaherty, there's not much he's going to add. He's still going to be a solid pitcher. I think he's going to be good for the Tigers, but I just think what he is at this point and what his ceiling is. Where I think Bueller, I don't think he's going to become like a Cy Young level old Walker Bueller type, but I do think that he'll still become a very good pitcher with this new evolution that he is in.
yeah, I gotcha. Yeah, that's interesting. It's hard to sometimes it's hard to tell for me if the postseason was just he had a good start or if he was actually figuring it out. So we'll see here soon. He's now with the Boston Red Sox, who we haven't talked about yet on our previews here. So that'll be an episode to watch for later. But we can move on now and talk about the bats here for the Dodgers this year. Another addition they made, Michael Conforto. He
Oh,
he
see,
came
I
over from
missed that one. Dang.
yeah. I didn't even think about it. I was looking through the slides and totally blanked on that. But Michael Conforto is here. We're talking about him now.
Yeah,
Playing left field. Andy Pages is listed in center field. I know that James Outman is also still around, so I don't know if James Outman will end up playing center field or if maybe they platoon. Maybe James Outman starts in the minors.
yeah.
Um,
Roberts has basically already said that Pajes is going to be the
Gotcha.
starting center fielder.
Gotcha. Well, that'll be interesting. Teoscar Hernandez comes back and plays right field. Signed a new deal. He was here last year, but he signed a new deal. Max Muncy at third base, still around. 35 years old. Interesting playing third base again. He's been moved around the infield several times. I think he played third base last year, but he was the defense could be a little bit of an adventure there. But Mookie Betts is at shortstop to start off this year. We'll see if he sticks there all year this time. I know that he's kind of played where the Dodgers have needed him to play. And last year, when Gavin Lux had his issues in the spring, they said, "Well, Mookie, you're playing shortstop," and Mookie said, "Thank you." And he played pretty well. So at shortstop, and he obviously played well in all other facets of the game as he always does. So
Yeah,
Mookie Betts there at short. Tommy Edman comes back, plays second base. Freddie Freeman at first. Very, very much a World Series hero now for the Dodgers. He's actually in his mid 30s as well, 35 years old this year. Shohei, obviously DH, the reigning MVP. We'll talk about him again on the next page. It'll be the only guy we get to do that with.
right.
Will Smith behind the plate. So Damian, I think really my main question about the lineup is here, and this is something that I think that it's going to be interesting to see this team over the next few years. This lineup this year is really good. I have a little bit of concern about center field and left field, but there's so much high end here that it kind of outweighs that, and there's enough depth in those positions that like something's probably going to pop. But my question for you is that the Dodgers have 7 of their 9 projected starting lineup are 30 or older, and their best players, Mookie Betts, well, show other than Shohei, Mookie Betts, Freddie Freeman, and Max Muncy, that their best position players are all like 32 and older. So,
Mhm.
do you think that there becomes a risk of some fall off here over the next couple of years with some of these star players that are starting to get up into their mid 30s? And do you think that some of these young guys that we talk about, those prospects you've got listed down there, could be in line to help bridge that gap a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I think you can always be wary and skeptical of people performing mid 30s and on, right? Like Father Time is undefeated. It doesn't matter what you say or how you go about it. But I think we've seen more recently, especially with the the more dive into performance science and the way people take care of their bodies nowadays. I think we're starting to see superstars perform better longer in through their 30s. So I think at some point, obviously, you're going to be a little bit worried about it, but there's a couple things. The Dodgers have money to spin their way out of any problem they have. First off, and they have one of the best front offices, if not the best front office at talent acquisition any way possible. So I do think you look at those prospects, and I think all of them have a shot, within the next 3 years to be up and be impactful guys on this roster. Like rushing could be up and could be a catcher now on other teams, but they just happen to have one of the best catching duos in the game already. So obviously there's going to be some worry as Mookie and Otani start aging more. Freddie's got like 3 years left on his deal, and Muncy is only signed through technically this year with a club option. So there's options to get off some other stuff there, but I definitely think at some point it's a concern. But I think you're looking at probably 3 years out until you start really, really worrying about that.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's really the only question I have about this lineup. I mean, other than
Yeah,
maybe center field, like there's really not that many questions. And of course, center field, they could move Tommy Edman there
yeah,
too at some point and have someone else play second. So that could be the best lineup might be Edman in center, Betts at second, and Miguel Rojas at short or something like that. So
it could.
Kike Hernandez at second or something. Like we don't. There's a lot of moves they could make here, and I
Yeah,
guess I should have mentioned the bench too. I mean, the bench is guys who have been with this franchise for a long time, and guys, Chris Taylor. I mean, Chris Taylor is a veteran who's been really good for a long time. Now he's taken a step back over the last couple of years. He's
yeah.
also up there in that mid 30s range, and it's not a star player. He started to fall off, but he's still a veteran player that can hold it down if you need him to. Austin Barnes is a pretty good backup catcher for Will Smith. Miguel Rojas, really good defensive shortstop, and Kike Hernandez is the fun guy here. So I guess we can move on now and talk about the pitching. And this is where I would probably have my only real concern about the Dodgers. The starting rotation looks really good at this point. Yamamoto coming into his second year in the big leagues after coming over from Japan. Had a really good first year, rookie season last year. He should pick up right where he left off. Roki Sasaki, he's a little bit of a mystery because we haven't seen him in the big leagues yet, but he's looked pretty good in the spring. Um, he's got the stuff, obviously. I mean, you can see that in Japan. He's got big league stuff. He performed well in the World Baseball Classic last year as well. Roki Sasaki is going to be interesting to see how he can handle the workload in the big leagues, and also if there's any adjustment. And then there's been injury concern with him at times too. So it'll be interesting to see how that works out in year one. But Roki Sasaki's obviously one of the best pitching prospects in the game, and definitely should slot right in here and be a really good pitcher in this rotation right away, is what the expectation would be. But there is a little bit of variation there. Blake Snell, we talked about him a lot in our first slide there. Obviously strikes a ton of guys out. He's either going to be a Cy Young or have a 4 ERA. We don't know which one it'll be, but we'll see. So Tyler Glass now, when he pitches, he's extremely good, but that's kind of been the issue with him when he pitches. Uh, Missed a lot of games late last season. Dustin May came off of Tommy John surgery, and he's listed in the rotation here. We'll see what happens with him. I don't know how many starts he's going to get, but maybe they turn him into a little bit of a swing guy type thing. We'll see. And then we got Shohei Ohtani, who is not going to be pitching, you know, early in the season. He's going to come back to the pitching side of things. I think mid-May. Is that right? June?
Yeah,
Is the expectation.
right around mid-May,
So
early June.
we'll be interesting to see. You know, Otani's had his second Tommy John surgery, so we'll see if he's we'll see how he's going to perform as a you know, on the mound now after going through it again. But you know, so Otani's such a freak athlete and everything. I would be surprised if he doesn't perform well. But Damien, out of those five or six, it looks really
Yeah.
good. I guess out of Yamamoto, Glasnow, and Snell, when you start a playoff series here in a few months, if they're all healthy, which one do you pick? Or Sasaki, I guess you could throw him in there. Which one do you pick to start game one in a playoff series?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. You put their names in a hat and pull one out. I mean, like honestly, I when I was making these slides and I was looking at it and I'm like, dude, they have Glass now as like starting pitcher 4.
Yeah.
You know, like he's starting pitching 1 on probably 25 teams in the league. You know, like it obviously that's where the embarrassment of riches is at right now for the Dodgers is on the pitching side. Um, you know, they're going when Otani comes back, they're going to go to a 6-man
Yeah.
rotation. That's why I listed all 6 here like that. I think the plan initially is to keep it a 5-man until Otani gets back, but I think you're going to see the workloads kind of curbed to where, you know, maybe instead of guys throwing 150 to 60 innings, you're going to be looking at most of them throwing 120 going into the playoffs, right? And Tony Gonsolin will be back this year. Kershaw
Yeah.
will be back this year. Emmett Sheehan, he'll probably be back at some point later this year as well. I think they have a ton of guys. I mean, we even can talk about Bobby Miller, Landon Knack, Justin Robleski. All of those guys will start some games this year as well. Like, I think their plan is to just, you know, keep everyone to around 100, 120 innings, keep everyone fresh. And then when the postseason gets there, you just have all of your top guys. And I really think game one's going to be matchup based, right? Like, do they have a bunch of left handed
Yeah.
hitters? Okay, well, then it's going to be Snell and Sasaki because Sasaki has the dynamite splitter. You know, do they have a bunch of right handers? Okay, well, we'll do Yamamoto and Glass now,
Yeah.
who are more, you know, high velocity and curveball guys and stuff like that. So I think it all kind of really just depends on matchups for game one starter. But
Right. Yeah, that's interesting. And of course, you know, Shohei Ohtani would be a wild card of that conversation too, just
yeah,
depending on how he looks when he comes back from the injuries. But you know, I think the big thing to talk about with this rotation is, and you see it down there at the bottom, and Damien kind of hinted at it, is injuries. That's something that really hurt the Dodgers last year in the rotation that kept them from hitting their ceiling in the regular season. Now they did end up winning the World Series once they got to the postseason. They got some good performances from guys, but they were really hurt going into the postseason last year on
yeah,
the pitching mound. And you know, you see the list of names there: Kershaw, Gonsolin, Ryan, Stone, Sheehan, and then we'll talk about the bullpen here in a minute too. And the bullpen's got a ton of guys on that list as well. Um, I think that's really the only concern I have because while they do have 4 guys in this rotation who should be really good, at least 3 of them have some form of injury concern. And then, you know, you also got Otani coming back, who I wasn't kind of counting in that initial rotation, and he's obviously got his injury concerns. And Yamamoto missed some time last year, so there are definitely some injury concerns with the Dodgers rotation, even though they do have so many guys.
mm-hmm.
It seems like none of them are sure to be healthy all the time. So, you know, and of course with the Dodgers, like I say, we're looking for things to say this is why this team could fail. Like not necessarily that this is a something they're gonna fail.
Right.
We're looking for ways that it's possible that they are not the best team in baseball this year,
Mm-hmm.
and that would probably be the failure mode for them is that they get injured in the pitching staff again, and you know have
Yeah.
some guys like you know an 80% healthy Tony Gonsolin and 37-year-old Clayton Kershaw coming off of all the injuries come out there and not pitch very well. So I think that's probably where you would look for an issue with this team, even though it's likely that at least some of these guys are going to stay healthy and it's going to end up being really good. So, looking at their bullpen, we talked about Tanner Scott and Kirby Yates. They've got Blake Trinan back; he's really good. Alex Vesia, you mentioned him. We were talking about the initial talking about Tanner Scott. He's I think he's really good as well. You know, looking at the rest of their list, it's not great. You also have to remember that Evan Phillips has had some injuries too. Michael Kopech has forearm inflammation from last fall. Those guys, I don't know if they're going to start the season or are they going to be ready, Damien?
The I think Phillips is going to be a couple weeks, and then Kopech, I think it's about a month, is what they
Okay,
said. I listed them on there as in the bullpen, so
right,
we could talk about the initial thing because the other people they had, which was Robleski, who's a starter, and then
right,
Jack Dreyer, who's like a fourth lefty. I don't think they're going to carry four lefties
yeah.
in the bullpen. So
Yeah, and they've I'm sure they got the Dodgers typically do a good job of picking up guys, and Giovanni Gallegos is one. Like they
yeah,
picked up guys in the uh, minor league deals that
yeah.
typically they do a pretty good job getting those guys to perform well enough. Um, but yeah, I mean this team just doesn't have too many holes here. So I guess we could talk about the outlook real quick on what this team is. The over/under win total. I know we've skipped so many teams that this is a crazy one, and it's kind of crazy anyways. But 103.5 is the over/under win total from DraftKings. Damien, you taking the over or under on this team?
So I'm gonna take the under, and I do that. People are gonna say, "Hey, you're just the Dodgers fan. You're gonna be trying to play it down." But I honestly think they don't care about the regular season, right? Like their plan is to be healthy for the postseason and go. Um, so I think they're going to slow play their pitching throughout the year to make sure they're all healthy for the postseason. They're they're going to as long as they're winning the division, they'll make sure their lineup stays healthy. Like I just don't think people are saying, are they going to push for the all time win total in a season? I don't think they care about that. Like all this team really cares about is winning the World Series. Um, so if they're pushed, if the Padres or Diamondbacks have a really good season and push them to go over this, then I think they can. But I think given the thing, like they'll probably sit there right around the 100 to 101, 102 win mark, very comfortably and just be fine with that.
Yeah, I'm with you on that, Damien. I think I'm going to take the under. The biggest thing for me is as I was talking about the pitching injuries, and even if they're not injured and they have all their guys going into the postseason, you were talking about them really limiting innings.
Sure.
And I think they're going to end up giving a lot of innings to guys who aren't out of their big four, big five guys.
Yeah.
And, there's going to be a lot of innings that get, picked up by pitchers who have struggled in the big leagues
Yeah.
at times. And I think that this team has the luxury of doing that because they're so good offensively that they can get away with it sometimes. So I just don't know. And I don't know that there's going to be that much urgency to go, win 110 games or something. I think you're going to end up seeing a team that wins. Last year they won 98. I mean, and I
Mhm.
think this team, on a talent standpoint, is real similar to last year. Maybe a touch better, but similar to last year. Um, there's also the possible regression of a couple of their stars, as we talked about, and you got the hole in center field, and left field is kind of a question mark with Conforto. So it'll be interesting to see how it all works out. This team is absolutely stacked. They're extremely deep. The odds to make the playoffs are minus 2,500. Uh, I mean, they're pretty much a lock for the playoffs right off the bat. Win the NL West minus 450. The NL West is a really good division, or that would be a lot higher. But the Diamondbacks are really good. The Padres still have some talent. The Giants have gotten a little bit better, so that probably brought that number down a little bit. The odds to win the World Series, and this is one final thing to add on this episode, is even the best team that is projected to be, probably has the best projections of any team we've ever seen, has a plus 290 odds to win the World Series, which means they've got a much less than 50-50 shot of winning the World Series. And that's what makes baseball so entertaining when we get to October. But
Mhm.
I guess that'll wrap it up for us. Any final thoughts?
Yeah, I guess just put a bunch of money on the Dodgers to make the playoffs. You might get something back. But no, I think it's just typically what we've talked about, right? Like this team is going to be really good. I think people stating they're going to be the best team ever, it's probably a little bit
Yeah,
overblown. Look for some ebbs and flows there throughout the year. Look at them protecting some people. They're a smart ran organization and they're going to do what they can to be ready for October and not peak out in September. So I think that's pretty much the easiest way to say it.
Absolutely. Well, that'll wrap it up for us here. Thank you so much for tuning in. Don't forget, like, comment, subscribe, and we appreciate your support, and we'll catch you on the next one.